are 0-2 on the CHGO Blackhawks Postgame Show podcast, presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to live your bet life. That's right, you're listening to the CHGO Blackhawks podcast. My name is Mario Tirabassi, along with Greg Boysen, and special guest today, Gail Kauchak from the Hockey Writers, joining us as a third person on the crew today. Gail, thanks for coming on. Hopefully you have some you have a good time, but unfortunately the Blackhawks didn't leave us with a good game to talk about. 6-3 the final. They lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Can't really be too surprised at the final result there, but it for a 6-3 game, it was actually exciting a little bit. You know, you take out you can't really take it out, but the 3 goals in 32 seconds from the Lightning, obviously the killer for the Blackhawks today. But outside of that, this is a pretty decent game from Chicago. Maybe the Lightning were playing down to them a little bit, but in a point of the season where wins and losses don't matter, you're going up against a Lightning team that you expect to get, run out of the building on. It was a little closer than the score says, right?
Yeah, you take away about 2 minutes of the game. I mean, the Lightning had 2 goals in 90 seconds in the second period.
And it's a 3-1 Blackhawks win. Exactly. Hey, look at that. Yeah, there we go.
If it wasn't for all those darn goals they allowed, we'd be talking about a victory right now. But, the score doesn't make it sound as bad as it was. But, again, we talked about it after yesterday's loss to the Flyers. It's another Blackhawks game where they failed to put together 3 solid periods in a row. First period was great.
Mm-hmm. It was the opposite of yesterday's game.
But then I tweeted out, I said, they're really going to regret only getting 1 goal this period. Vasilevsky made a couple big saves. They had a couple posts. You felt like it should have been 3-0, and then of course the Lightning come right out and score in the first minute, second period, and it was tough after that. But yeah.
Yeah, they really did. They hung in there that first period and even like most of the second period, and it's just like you said, it's that kind of thing where they cannot put it together consistently, and you're always so excited after the first period, and then next thing you know, it goes downhill.
Yeah, and Andrei Vasilevsky absolutely robbed Kirby Dach in the first period. That could have completely changed the trajectory of this game, but in the second period, 2 goals a minute and a half apart for the Lightning to get them back into the game, get them the lead actually, and then early on in the third period, 3 goals in 32 seconds. I mean, they're a team that is just at an absolutely another level than the Blackhawks, probably 2 levels more than the Blackhawks actually have, and watching that, it just made me think back to remember when the Blackhawks could do that to teams? Just have a stinker of a period and then decide, hey, we're not going to let that happen again, and then just turn it on and absolutely bury a team in the blink of an eye.
It was kind of the throwback to that almost when they played the Oilers the other night. We just had a spark of that. How the good old days, how it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at a point, like I said, at the point in the season now where wins and losses really don't matter, seeing those flashes can give you a little bit of a jolt, and give you something to keep you engaged in the game.
On the plus side, no too many men penalties today.
That's
baby
steps.
Exactly. You're looking for an improvement?
Progress.
There's your improvement. You had 4 in the last 2 games, 0 tonight. So way to go, guys, on figuring out how to count to 5. Congratulations.
Yeah. So I think that's the Lightning scoring
Lightning
again.
Just scored again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the Blackhawks, they got the first goal of the game, but they do come away with the loss now 16-6-3 this season when they score the first point or the first goal of the game. That first goal of the game came from Dylan Strome. He's got 3 goals in his last 2 games. This was his 200th career game as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. This was his 50th goal as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks, his 132nd point in those 200 games. That's a 20.5 goal, 54-point pace over an 82-game season as a member of the Blackhawks. Now, it's been very inconsistent in those 200 games. More than almost half of those points all came in his first season with the Blackhawks. It was, a partial portion of the 2018-2019 season. But again, he's one of 3 guys tonight that get a goal and an assist. And it's just like it's another day, another game of do we invest in Dylan Strome? Do we trade Dylan Strome? And I think as the season has gone on, as he's been getting the right opportunities to play in the right positions under Derek King, I think we're seeing more of a reason to invest in him as this season comes to a close. I think we're getting less of an idea to trade him and maybe have him be part of the short-term future.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but sitting between the two of you, I'm getting major deja vu, like how many times I've had this conversation this season. Yeah, I think they should keep him at this point. I mean, why the heck not? As we've all said numerous times, he's playing in the position he should be playing in. He's given the chance to succeed. He's making the most of it. He's not going to kill your salary cap even if you give him a qualifying offer, which I think
be $3.6 million.
I mean, come on, at this point, you're going to be shedding a lot of salary between now and the start of next season. You know, Marc-Andre Fleury's $7 million is not going to be on the books.
One way or another.
Right. He's either
we'll talk about that later.
Right. But he's not going to be here at the start of the next season. And even if for some miracle he is, it's not going to be at $7 million.
Right.
You know, you've got DeHaan's contract, again, one way or the other, won't be on the books next season, and depending on the trades. So $3.6 million for a guy that can produce 50 points in a full season, that's, to me, that's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. At his age.
At his age and at the center position.
Right. And he's improved a lot on his last couple games at the dot have not been great, but overall, the strides he's made this season have been remarkable. I don't think he gets enough credit for how much better he's gotten at winning faceoffs, because he went from being a complete liability to being the guy taking all the important draws. Just look at the numbers. Just all you got to do is look at how many draws Dylan Strome took tonight and how many Jonathan Toews took tonight. It's almost double. What does that tell you? So
yeah, and you know, we were talking about it during the game. You know, in the third period, I had to look up from the box score and say, has Jonathan Toews been on the ice tonight? Because it was just a game where, you know, the last night he was, you
super
know,
noticeable.
Super noticeable, all over the score sheet. You know, picking some fights, and then tonight I seriously had to be like, has he played? Because it was just like just a ghosting. And I think a lot of it is because Dylan Strome his role is starting to pick up, and I think Derek King is starting to see the momentum he's got and putting him into on the ice for more important positions. Yeah,
I definitely think he's worth investing in. You know what you have with him already. He's already given. He knows the rest of the Blackhawks. He knows how to play with Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane knows how to play with him. DeBrincat, obviously, we know that they have all kinds of chemistry together. And to me, you know, I know that it took you a while to kind of turn around to this idea of Strome. You know, we should trade him. But I think that he really has. He'd be better off, and he'd be a good building block for the rebuild.
Absolutely. No, yeah. I mean, I was all for trading him when they weren't playing him, and when they were trying to make him a fourth line grinder. It's like I wanted them to trade him for his sake. Get this kid out of here because they're not using him well, and they're doing him more damage than good. But then all of a sudden, they put him where he should be, and holy cow, he's actually playing like a talented player. It's amazing how that happens.
What do you know?
So yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, we're all in consensus here that it seems like should be a part of the short-term plan. Whether that's going to be, you know, part of the rebuilding process as a player that they build around or as a complementary piece, I think it's worth investing in him, because if you trade him now, like his trade value is obviously going up because, you know, he's producing, but he's producing, which also means like, okay, maybe we need to hang on to this kid. In a Dylan Strome trade, are you more inclined to say, well, if we get like a second round pick for him, is rolling the dice on a second round pick better than having a 24, 25-year-old guy who can play, you know, who can play the center position and play it effectively when he's put with the right teammates?
He's a known commodity, and you don't know what you're going to get when like you said, when we're going to get a second round guy for him.
Yeah, I would think if you're going to trade him, I would actually maybe it'd have to be more than a pick at this point. Maybe give me a actual prospect,
decent
an actual
prospect, yeah,
player that we know what we might get, as opposed to a second round draft pick. I mean, because a second round draft pick could be Graham Knott. I mean, and then
right.
that's
Well,
a terrible trade.
And we've already seen Kyle Davison making some moves in the scouting department already. So hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I would want more than a pick, I think, at this point, just for all the reasons we've said. Gail, known commodity, going to be able to get him at a very good price value for his production. And by the way, I think we should, going forward, we should name this segment the Dylan Strome Dead Horse segment. 'Cause it feels like every night we're gonna like talk about him. But come on, it's a big topic, and a lot of people want to know what's going to happen. And until March 21st, we're just going to have to keep talking about it.
Right. And it's one of those topics that it's just like, there's not really a wrong answer, because you can trade him and get fair value and recoup some draft picks and some younger prospects, and maybe you hit on a player that's going to be better than Dylan Strome. Maybe you do that, or you keep him around, you get him for a cheap contract, you keep someone in that center position, a position that the Blackhawks don't have a lot of depth at. No. Someone who can be effective and play with guys who are theoretically going to be here beyond the next season or two with Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane. Another person that is in the trade talks that is also, there's no real wrong answer whether you trade him or keep him, is Marc-Andre Fleury. He was in net tonight. Obviously not a great game, allowing the 6 goals. But, we saw late last night, a report from Steve Simmons. I know, pause for groans. That Marc-Andre Fleury had asked the Blackhawks to not trade him prior to the trade deadline coming up on the 21st. A couple minutes later, Steve Simmons said, well, actually, another source told me the opposite. And then he said, well, I don't know what to believe. Ben Pope basically came out and said, no one should believe what this guy is saying.
Which is absolutely true.
That is true. And I will own it. I saw the report and I thought, Steve Simmons, okay. Maybe once in a while he can be right?
Broken clock is right twice a day still, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. So I thought maybe, and then I in the fallout, it was just like, maybe it shouldn't have been something to promote. But
by the way, Steve Simmons just blocked you on Twitter.
That's fine.
Sure.
Sorry, Steve. But yeah, I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is someone that the Blackhawks should be trading from a business standpoint. He's their biggest trade piece, recoup prospects, recoup draft picks, at least a top-end draft pick. We talked yesterday about a couple teams that have, a need to improve their goaltending, a couple contenders that are going to do that. But is the idea of him sticking around the rest of this season, beyond not moving away from his family, not having to move his family out of Chicago? We can talk about how Stan Bowman kind of, under the table promised, say, hey, we're not going to trade you. If Kyle Davison wants to honor that or not, that's up to him. But the idea of Fleury sticking around for the rest of this season, does that show to you guys a possibility that, he says he wants to play another year? Would he come back next year to Chicago?
I mean, that's up to him. If he's coming back here, it's got to be on the cheap, a very extreme discount from what he's making this year. He may decide, do I want to be a 1B or a backup for a contender, or do I want to be a full-time starter? It's a tough decision. You can't, the Blackhawks are in no position, especially for the 22-23 season. We talked about it on yesterday's postgame, to be investing at the goaltending position. If your aim is to rebuild and your aim is to get a high draft pick, I'm not saying tanking. That word will not be advocated, but you don't really need a top goaltender when you're going to have a young team trying to find out who belongs in the AHL, and you've got 2 goaltenders that you kind of still don't know about yet, and Kevin Lankinen, Arvid Soderblom. So is it, you could definitely benefit for having a guy like Fleury to work with those two guys. Sure, that would be a benefit, but it's also a benefit to maybe let those two guys have the whole season to see how it shakes out and not spend the money for a Marc-Andre Fleury. There's no right or wrong answer, I don't think, about this. I mean, if he keeps him here and honors the agreement that he made with somebody else, half the fan base is going to be mad at Kyle Davidson for not trading him. And if he does trade him, then half the fan base is going to be mad at him for reneging on that deal. And it's like, you can't win, so Davidson needs to make that. I mean, we don't even know if he said not trade him. We don't. So this is all, again, 15 days. We'll find out. It's going to be a crazy 15 game.
It will be interesting to see what happens for sure. And, it's the personal side. I guess that's why I'd like to address with Marc-Andre Fleury. I think that Kyle Davidson and the Blackhawks organization should honor that unwritten agreement that they had with Marc-Andre Fleury, because this, again, it's just the personal side, and sometimes you got to look past the business side of things and honor that, especially for somebody that's a Hall of Famer and that seems to enjoy it here. So, we'll see. And gosh, like you said, I guess you don't really need a good goaltender next year. But he said he only wants to play one more year, and I could see him totally wanting to go to a contender, sure. But if that doesn't happen, might be nice to have him around another year if he was willing to sign for
at the right price.
The right price,
half of what
to be a mentor and to basically help some of the other goaltenders get a little bit more up to speed.
Right.
You can, that can work.
And to Gail's point, honoring the, hey, we're not going to trade you kind of agreement that is said to have made. It's an optics thing, because if you come in as Kyle Davidson. You come in as GM and Marc-Andre Fleury, he only has a 10-team no trade list, but they have this agreement saying, hey, we weren't going to trade you this year no matter what happened. If he doesn't honor it, what does it say to potential other free agents that might come to Chicago, or guys looking to sign long-term deals and say, hey, Marc-Andre Fleury is one of the most liked and respected players by fans and his teammates and even his opponents, to go against a guy like that and say, hey, I didn't want to be traded, I didn't want to move my family again, and then just say, sorry, buddy, and ship him out. I mean, that's bad optics on Kyle Davidson, who's obviously new to the position, and it has to build up a reputation that free agents will want to come to Chicago and play for the organization, play for a front office that can, respect its players.
Not to mention the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury has already kind of gotten the raw end of the stick in his career a couple different times. He was pushed out with the Penguins, and then he was pushed out with the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's just, I think it would leave a really bad taste in everybody's mouth if they went against whatever. I think that they should really honor what Marc-Andre Fleury wants to do, especially at this point in his career.
For sure. And the one thing that Kyle Davidson can get away with, it still won't look good, but he can say, I didn't make that deal. That was
right. Yeah,
that wasn't me. I'm not backing out on my word.
And if he wants to really, push the ghost of Stan Bowman away from his name,
he's got that built-in excuse saying
he could say, hey,
that wasn't
I
me.
wasn't the one that said I wasn't trading Marc-Andre Fleury. And
again, disclaimer: we still don't know that he said please don't
exactly,
trade. So
exactly.
We'll probably find out more as we get closer to the deal, and please make sure you're sticking around here at CHGO Blackhawks. I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot on our podcast going forward, and as well as a lot of the great written content that we're going to be busting out here over the next couple weeks. Busy time. Personally, I like covering a team when they're a seller at the trade deadline and better than a buyer. It's
exciting.
It's a little, there's lots of fun scenarios you can come up with and then see how it shakes down, especially with a guy, first-time GM. It's going to be fun. I'm sure we're all going to hate everything. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
That's the thing, though, is that we're not going to really be able to get a gauge on his moves because theoretically what he's said he's going to do is make moves for a rebuilding team. These are going to be moves that we might not see the true results
Right.
for 2, 3, 4 years.
That's my disclaimer: is be patient. Don't judge the Kyle Davidson era on what he does at the trade deadline. These are just the very first scrapings at the surface here, and it's part of a long process. But what do we say that here? We're hopping on the ride. It's time to hop on the ride for Kyle Davidson, and get on board. There it is. Hop on the ride. Get on board. It starts March 21st. It might start before then, but it's going to be a roller coaster. It's going to have some dips. It's going to have some heights. We'll probably get flipped upside down a few times, but hopefully at the end, we get off that roller coaster and we're like, that was the greatest ride we've ever been on. Let's go to the parade. God, I love it.
Well, get ready for it to be a long ride.
Yeah, those are the good horns. Those are the hop on the ride horns. Those aren't the Tampa Bay Lightning scores.
You jinxed it.
Another turnover right in the back of the net.
The best way to support Kyle Davidson as he looks to build the Blackhawks back up is to have patience. The best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app. That's what we call a transition.
That's a segue.
Use the code CHGO when you sign up, and if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. You could get that CHGO Blackhawks shirt. Got that logo there in the bottom left of the screen, bottom right of the screen, and it's on a beautiful T-shirt, bright red. The logo really pops, looks great. If you have any questions, you can email pointsbet@allchgo.com, and we will help you. Remember that PointsBet is your home for live in-game betting. They even have a new exclusive feature, live NBA same-game parlays. For the first time ever, build the perfect live same-game parlay only with PointsBet. Combine your favorite bets anytime during the game. And now, online sign-up is available in Illinois. You can download the PointsBet app right now and register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. Again, use the code CHGO, and you get 2 risk-free bets for up to $2,000. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Now, a feature that we've started doing
Extra special comment for you.
Oh, we got a special comment? Catherine. Oh, hello. That's an interesting last name. It looks familiar. Hop on the ride, she says. I think Catherine's hopping on the ride with us here.
Gotta love it. Say, hey, we're talking about, PointsBet. We're big winners tonight.
That is true.
Big winners.
That is true. Yeah.
We hit the over.
Some points. Some PointsBet advice when the Lightning are playing the Blackhawks. Bet the over, and that'll usually pay off for you.
Yep.
Mario and I are about $1.67 closer to early retirement because of our huge wagers tonight. But seriously, it's a lot of fun to get on there, throw a couple bucks at a game. It adds a little excitement because the over was 5.5, and we're like, giving each other high fives when the Hawks go down by 4, because like, we got $1. All right, winner. Say half a chicken dinner.
Anything that can keep the games exciting, especially when the results usually don't matter. But so what we do here, what we've started doing here on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast, because this is Chicago, the Chicago flag has 4 stars on it. Hockey does 3 stars. We go for our 4th star of the game. The 3 stars of the game, much like yesterday, were all on the opponent, the opposing team. All 3 came from the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we have the full Blackhawks lineup to choose from. So we are all going to pick our 4th star of the game. I'll start off as the guy we already talked about a little bit so far in tonight's show. My 4th star is Dylan Strome. Goal and assist tonight, 5 points in his last 3 games. We already talked about Strome's night, his impact, and everything like that. I think he's really been a driving force for the Blackhawks in the latter half of this season. And I think he's being put in the right positions, and we're getting the results that I think a lot of people were hoping to see from Dylan Strome all season. It's just happening later than we had hoped. So, Greg, who do you got for your fourth star?
Well, one of these times we're going to actually not have the entire Blackhawks roster to pick
We hope.
That was kind of the whole point, to like kind of find the unsung hero, but excuse me, but I'm going to go with Patrick Kane, one of 3 guys who had 2 points tonight, goal and assist. This weekend was like the Patrick Kane we were used to seeing. 2 amazing assists. He had that assist yesterday, both on Dylan Strome goals. He had the assist yesterday from his favorite spot on the Philadelphia ice, and he had another one today, moving away from the net, no look, backhand pass, right on the tape.
Eyes in the back of his head.
3 guys in the entire world can make that pass, and just phenomenal. We're seeing a lot of passion, the passion in the fire, my friends. We're seeing that from Kaner these last couple games. He seems, more involved, and his natural demeanor through his career makes you at times say, "Hey, does he really want to be out there?" But and we've talked a lot on our various outlets this season that he'd been struggling to find that scoring touch for a lot of the years, but now he's got 6 goals in his last 6 games. Since January 26th, he's got 9 goals and 22 points in his last 15 games. So we've been waiting. When's that point explosion going to come from 88? Well, we're in the midst of it right now. Another big game for him. So Patrick Kane is my CHGO 4th star of the night.
Gail, your inaugural 4th star. What do you got?
All right. Well, who else can you go with? All 3, like you said, all 3 of them, a goal and assist, 4 shots on goal. Alex DeBrincat also had a very good game tonight, and he got those same stats in a little bit less ice time. So, right, he's hustling out there, and still leading with what are we at now? 32 goals.
32 on the season.
season.
Only behind 5 players in the rest of the league this year,
awesome.
with 32 this year. It's his 5th season, his 3rd 30-goal season. He had 28 as a rookie. So I mean, this last year or 2 years ago was the absolute anomaly season for Alex DeBrincat in goal scoring. We've seen it the last 2 years. This is who he is. This is the player he is. He's a sniper. He's a goal scorer. Yeah.
And he's arguably been, the most consistent player this season. Yeah. Kane's kind of been up and down. Of course, he's always been the playmaker and the assists and all that. But like you said, he's really just come into his own, DeBrincat has, and it's just been consistent. You can pretty much count on him for a goal every game for the most part. Not every game, but close enough. You're not surprised.
He's going to have a chance. Yeah, and he had a couple chances tonight. He did get one, but he had a couple chances. But Andrei Vasilevsky was just even though allowing 3 goals, he still was. It could have been 7 goals tonight for Chicago.
Yeah.
There was no surprise that he was one of the 3 stars for the Lightning today. But okay.
Well, let's go back to your 4th star, Patrick Kane. I mean, he just got robbed at the end of the game there, Vasilevsky. You stood there saying, "Oh my God!"
I tweeted out that was the greatest 9-goal goaltending duel I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, 9 goals were given up, but both guys made some tremendous saves. Vasilevsky showed why he's the perennial Vezina favorite every season. He's the best goalie in the league, and he you would say, he gave up 3 goals, but I mean, nobody makes that save. I'm pretty sure I got to go visit a doctor tomorrow. I think I blew out my hamstrings just watching
him make that save. Yeah.
And one more point on DeBrincat. Even when he's not scoring, he's shooting. I mean, he's consistently 5-6 shots on goal a night. So that's what you want your goal scorers to do. When you keep shooting, you're gonna get your 30 plus 40 goals. So there's very few bad things you can say about the cat these days.
So who are we going with?
Oh, that's a tough.
Gosh, we have to decide now.
I know, pressure.
Now we have to decide between
Can we have a
three
three-way
guys
tie?
who did the exact same thing tonight.
Right. Yeah. All right.
I think we touched on it earlier. Dylan Strome, has been having some big impacts. Obviously, he was my pick tonight. I conceded the pick yesterday. I'm defending Dylan Strome tonight. I'm defending him as my pick.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. I mean, it's hard to argue. I mean, you can argue Kaner should have had at least 2 goals tonight, but he didn't. So, we can make it 2 for 2 for Strome. You know, he's earned it.
That's true.
He's at a degree. He was our 4-star.
He was the 4-star last
yesterday,
night.
So,
yep.
Oh, well, then maybe you got to go with somebody else.
I don't know.
If you're are you conceding Patrick Kane?
I'll concede the Kaner
So between Strome and DeBrincat, I mean, I'm defending Dylan Strome tonight. I gave it up to him yesterday.
Gail's a big DeBrincat fan, so she might not concede as easy as I did.
Well,
I wavered.
No.
Pretty
I think I can go with Strome. You know, he also had a lot of missed shots. He's just getting the chances, and he's putting himself in the right positions. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the rest of the season. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that because he could get traded.
But at least the next 2 weeks.
I'm excited to see if, and hopefully to see him develop with Patrick Kane and even with DeBrincat or with whoever else might happen to be on their line. I think that it could be a good thing moving forward.
Well, so the Blackhawks are 0-2 since we've been the CHGO Blackhawks podcast, but Dylan Strome is 2-0 as the CHGO 4th star of the game. So
Way to go,
congratulations to Dylan. That'll be another shirt sent your way. We'll get your mailing address there.
I think we're the reason, and he needs to just take a 3-block walk due east.
Yeah.
And come sit here in one of these chairs one of these nights.
That's true.
We're the Dylan Strome podcast in Chicago.
Well, you know, and he's
unofficial.
just gotten the shaft for so much of the season.
You always have a spot on our
season,
top line,
so
Dylan. Come on over.
We wanted to give him some love.
There you go. He's earned it. He's earned it. The kid, you know, he could have said a lot of terrible things this year while getting healthy scratch and while playing. And he just said, hey, I'm doing what was being asked of me. He did it like a pro, and he got his chance, and now he's succeeding. So very happy for him.
Now let's just hope that my pick doesn't go invisible in the next game like Jonathan Toews did.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So now we're getting to a point in the season where wins and losses don't matter. We're getting to a point in the season where, you know, the Blackhawks are going to have a lot of roster turnover. Greg, you have a post that's going to be going up pretty soon here on CHGO allchgo.com about the players to get excited for the Blackhawks. Give us a little bit of a preview of that. Who's someone that, you know, we can probably expect to see come up into the lineup in the next couple of weeks, and someone that we can look at and be like, hey, might have a future piece here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the obvious answer there is going to be Lucas Reichel, but everybody knows it's only a matter. It's not if he's going to be featured with the Blackhawks, it's when. Does it happen more this season, or do they want to keep him to help the Ice Hogs push for that playoff spot? So we'll see. The guy that I would guess, well, I mean, I would like to say Arvid Soderblom, but again, that all hinges on Marc-Andre Fleury. If Marc-Andre Fleury is traded, then Soderblom will come up here and maybe get an extended look. You know, there's a lot of good defensive prospects in the system. There's not a lot of forward help that can come to the NHL right now outside of Reichel. You know, you got Josiah Slavin, but I'm not going to put the Mr. Excitement tag on him just yet. So I'm going to look at the back end because I think there will be some trades. Calvin DeHaan most likely will be traded. You know, we talked a little bit about that. There's going to be some movement on that back end, and the Blackhawks have a lot of guys that can come up and get a look. And the guy that I want to see get more than just a game or two is Isaac Phillips. This kid has impressed me a ton over the past 2 seasons. He was a 5th-round pick back in 2020. I think I'm getting that right. 4th or 5th round. I'll have to double-check that. But he wasn't even supposed to go pro last year. He was supposed to play in the Ontario Hockey League, but because of the COVID pandemic, they canceled their season, and the AHL changed the age rule, so he was allowed to play as a 19-year-old. And then within like 3 weeks of playing, he got his entry-level contract. He's been great down in Rockford. He's added a little bit more offense to his game. He's a big kid, 6'3", got some size. Will finish his check. Will get in those post whistle scrums and defend his teammates. So maybe Alex DeBrincat doesn't have to go after 7-foot players anymore. And he's just such a great kid. I've had the pleasure to talk to him a few times covering the Ice Hogs. great personality, very positive. So I think he's going to be a fan favorite here in Chicago for a long time. Based on how he plays the game, he's that big, old-school physical defenseman that you still need in today's game. And he's just a likable guy as well. So I'm rooting for Isaac Phillips. I want to see him up here and get an extended look after the trade deadline.
Comments. How about Mike Hardman, just named player of the month for Rockford?
Yeah,
He's getting the call back up.
Hardman, he's one of those tweener guys, as I like to call him. Like he does really well in Rockford, and he plays okay in the with the Hawks. I think he's like a half a step too slow to be a real difference maker at that level. But he could be one of those nice players to fill in a fourth line penalty kill role. Definitely a guy that should get a look down the stretch for sure.
We were talking about it when we were watching the game today. Mackenzie Entwistle, not a great game. Maybe that's someone who shuffles out of the lineup for a game or two to give an opportunity to a guy like Mike Hardman or like Josiah Slavin to get them up into the lineup. And Mackenzie Entwistle is not a guy that you're gonna look to scratch too often because he's been playing pretty consistently in the role that he's been given, in the role that's gonna like keep him in the NHL. But I think that's a player that can kind of shuffle through, give some of these up and coming Ice Hogs a chance to get into the NHL lineup.
In Entwistle's defense, though, he's new too, and he hasn't been around for that long either. So I could see, he's had a bad couple games, but he's also, I think, scored the most goals of all the younger guys. I want to say he's like, is he at 8? I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But you also want to give him a chance to struggle and to get through that as well. So I don't know if
he seems to be a guy that Derek King likes.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that stems from coaching him in Rockford before he came up to to be the head coach of the Blackhawks, and Whistle came up as well. But yeah, I mean that seems like again, it's one of those young players that you're going to have as a complementary piece, whether he's part of the long-term plan or not. I don't know. You can't really say that now, but as a young player who could play a role. In the bottom six, it's a guy that you want to give some ice time to.
Yeah, let him go through his growing pains and then come out the other side. I'd like to see him, really kind of bounce back. If you do give him that extended time to keep playing.
Yeah, and he's a kid that made a lot of strides, a lot of progression in a short period of time. I think that's why King's got a soft spot for him. You look back at opening night 2 seasons ago in Rockford, and you're kind of like, this not a great skater, doesn't have the speed, and then all of a sudden by the end of that season, you're like, holy cow, the progression was great. There were 2 kids that season that really made leaps and bounds. It was him, and then it was Hagel. Hagel took it way further than that.
Oh, yeah.
But those were guys, and that's what you want out of your AHL teams, is you want these guys to show progression, and guys that you thought maybe have a chance to be in AHL all of a sudden cement a spot. So, Entwistle struggled tonight. It was -4 in about 8 minutes. That's rough.
Not great.
That's a rough game. But let him bounce back, see how he comes. But Hardman's a guy that I think we'll see down the stretch. Once this trade deadline passes, and we know how many spots have opened up on this roster, we'll see a lot more of these young guys, because this is the time, as you said, wins and losses don't matter anymore for the rest of this season. Sure, it's fun to win games, but this is the time that Kyle Davidson needs to use to start the long process of hopping on the ride and figuring out who's going to be here when this team is again. There it is.
Seeing who's going to be, on that train with them.
Right. Who's going to be a passenger and who's getting kicked off at the very next station. That's what we got to figure out. So he's going to have, after the deadline, he's going to have 18 games or whatever it is to start figuring out who I want to keep around and who we're going to find a different place to play. So, it'll be interesting to see what this roster looks like on March 22nd and where we can take it from there.
And it's going to start to seem like we're kind of talking about a lot of the same things, but I think it's because the trade market right now, we haven't seen much action whatsoever in the NHL. It really seems like the teams that are going to be buyers are still waiting to kind of see how things play out as we get closer to the deadline. There's always can be an unfortunate injury that comes at the worst time to a big name player, and I think what we're seeing is all these contending teams are. It's not going to be a big buyer's market. I think what we're going to see as the deadline approaches in the next 2 weeks, we're going to see like maybe each contender gets one big move, and that's all you're really going to see, because we're really coming down to the wire here before anything is really, there's really been no trade that is, broke the dam and said, oh, okay, now we Ben Sherratt for some reason is the biggest, defenseman out there. Yeah. But, it's him, it's Jacob Chikrin. Once those two guys looked as the top guys, then it might be, okay, now we have a run on defensemen. And that's when people, a player like Calvin DeHaan starts to be, mentioned. The forwards market has to open up before Dominic Kubalik can get traded. We like we spoke about, we don't really know what's going to happen with Marc-Andre Fleury, but I think, it's until that first major deal happens in some of these, with some of these players, we're kind of just waiting and seeing.
Well, and we're talking about it so much longer too, because it's just different this year with the trade deadline being a little bit later. So, it does feel like we've been talking about it forever.
Well, and with the Blackhawks too being basically out of it since the end of October.
Right. So it's been on all of our minds.
Yeah. Well, we're just waiting for that domino to fall, and then we'll figure out, because the Blackhawks don't have the market driver. Really.
Right, yeah.
They don't. They don't have the guy that everybody's waiting to see where he goes, and then, everybody else falls in. And we haven't seen a trade yet, which is surprising. Usually we get
something.
We get one a couple of weeks ahead of time that kind of gets everybody else thinking, okay, well, if you gave up this for this guy, then I'll give up the same for this guy. But I think when that first one happens, it's going to be like taking the cork out of the dam, and it's all going to come rushing out.
Yeah, we won't be able to keep up with everything.
Who knows?
It'll all happen at once.
Maybe Sportsnet will actually have a trade deadline show with trades this year, because was it last year where like all the big trades were made like the day before?
Yeah, it seems to be every year when trade deadline day actually comes, it's all the big deals have already happened, and you have a lot of you have a run on minor deals going on, but. Maybe this year might be the year where the actual deadline day is where you see some of those big blockbuster trades happen, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out, because like you said, the Blackhawks aren't a team that has that top trade piece. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury, whether he's on the market or not, could be as far as goaltenders go, but
but when you look at the rest of the goaltending market, there's a big drop off after that. So, like, I look at him as a unique trade chip if he's going to get traded, as opposed to the guy that sets the value for every other goalie that's going to get traded. Because how many other goalies are really being talked about getting moved right now?
Not many.
That's what makes Marc-Andre Fleury that much more valuable if you're going to trade him, because he's the best guy available, no doubt, if he's available.
Right. Exactly.
I can't wait for that March 21st CHGO Blackhawks podcast.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. That one will pretty much set the tone for what we do the rest, not only just the rest of this season and what we focus on, what we talk about. It's also going to set the tone for kind of the future of the Blackhawks. This really is going to be the benchmark point for Kyle Davidson to really etch his name on the Blackhawks and push them forward into the new era.
We'll get our first decent idea of what direction he wants to head in, which will be exciting. Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
That's all we want is lots to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, all the more reason to hop on the ride now as things start to progress as we get closer to March 21st. Another player that is in the mix, Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times put it out there during today's game. I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but Henrik Borgstrom is we have Ben saying that he is actually actively being shopped by the Blackhawks. It's he's been one of those lower level rumored players to be on the trade block. Ben coming out and saying that he's actually actively being traded. I don't know how much you can actively trade a guy who you continuously scratch and has 2 points in his last 20 games, but he's out there.
Yeah, I'm actively shopping for some Dr. Scholl's foot pads too. It's about the same thing. Like just like you said, how could you be trying to trade a guy you're not playing?
Right, and he's
if you can't find the lineup on a struggling team, who's beating down the door for this guy right now?
Yeah, there's not going to be much return value there.
No. I mean, you might even see a deal where it's a 7th round pick.
Yeah.
Future considerations.
Yeah.
I mean, and we were talking about it during the game. You know, the trade with Florida that brought in Borgstrom as this. You know, it's another reclamation project, and you also got Riley Stillman, and you got a 7th round pick out of it, and you got Brett Connolly. How much of that has actually panned out?
It hasn't been good because you took on that Brett Connolly deal to get Borgstrom. They were high on Borgstrom, and now Connolly has essentially been an AHL player at $3 million for, he's going to be a buyout guy,
and he has term left on his deal.
Right, he's another year after this year. So you took on that bad contract to get Borgstrom, who just needed to change the scenery, and it hasn't worked out for him. Riley Stillman, okay, sure. I mean, he's young.
Yeah,
he fits the mold of a rebuilding team. Keep him around. It's not going to kill you. The 7th round pick has been kind of good. Jalen Lupin.
Yep.
Spoiler alert: he will be in that post that goes live tomorrow. He can turn out to be a real diamond in the rough. But overall, yeah, that trade, because what you gave up Lucas Wallmark. He was great in the Olympics for Sweden, but that meant he wasn't playing.
But that meant he wasn't in the NHL.
But then you gave up Lucas Carlson, who's turned out to be a real serviceable defenseman for the Panthers, one of the best teams in the league. Would you rather have Lucas Carlson? Would you rather have Riley Stillman? I'd rather have Lucas Carlson right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're both young defensemen. I think Carlson was, if I'm not mistaken, a 2-time AHL or 2-time Ice Hogs Defenseman of the Year when he was in the minors. He really was one of those prospects that you kind of looked at in the minor leagues and was just like, why is he not getting more of an NHL look? Why is he not, coming up more, getting more time at the NHL level? And it just happened to end up being a trade piece that he goes to a Florida team who's contending, and he's part of the reason that he's contending.
He's doing well with another guy the Blackhawks didn't have a need for, Gustav Forsling. Yeah. I mean, we talked about earlier how many of these guys, Jan Ruda, we saw tonight, 2-time champion with Tampa, Michael Kempney won a cup. These are guys that couldn't find the ice here, and they're winning Stanley Cups with other teams. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean they're put into more consistent roles. More. Obviously, they're put on better teams.
Right.
Yeah.
But being a lot of times with these players being in and out of the lineup, you have, like we've seen with, like, I keep bringing them up, but we see with Dylan Strome in and out of the lineup, inconsistent role. You're not going to get production out of treating a guy like that. So you look at some of these defensemen that have come through the Blackhawks and have left the Blackhawks. They're given more of a consistent role, more consistent time, and they figure it out elsewhere. And like you said, Kempney, Ruda, like these guys were playing top minutes for teams that ended up winning a Stanley Cup. I mean, it's not that they weren't good. It's just the Blackhawks didn't find a good position. It's
amazing what a little bit of confidence will do for a young player. When a young player realizes that, hey, my coach trusts me and I could screw up and I'm not going to sit in the press box for 3 games. It's amazing how that changes their trajectory. And yes, you were right. They're all playing for much better teams as well. That doesn't hurt. But,
right.
Instilling a little confidence in a young player can go a long way.
And one of the guys that, when you talk about confidence in a young player, it's Kirby Dach this season. He had a couple chances tonight. Obviously, he in the first period he had that shot saved by Andrei Vasilevsky, but he was around the net. He was making things happen. He was getting a little physical. Almost almost got put into the Colby Colin seats between the benches there by Cernak on the Lightning. But he's getting some confidence. I think as the season progresses, he's seeing some a little bit of an uptick in production. That's a guy that I think, coming off of the injury last year, coming off of being pushed back into the lineup when he wasn't fully healthy, he's starting to build it up this season. And that's another guy that I think is going to be part of the rebuild and part of the, players that are going to be building blocks to get the Blackhawks back to a prominent place in the NHL.
Yeah, he does seem like he's kind of coming into his own, and I just, again, like you said, the confidence, and I was actually one of the, I questioned at one point, thinking, oh gosh, maybe he's just, not cut out, and not what they not going to make it, and but then you do think about the fact that he just hasn't really had that chance. I mean, this is basically his first full season, and there was a part of me that was like, oh gosh, maybe they should just get what they can for him and just trade him and just say goodbye. But I'm really feeling now that he just needs a little bit more time, and you can see that as he's gaining more confidence. And I think that he might just be one of these people that takes a little bit longer to kind of come into his own as well. So we'll see. I think that the Blackhawks are committed to him, and I think that he will be around next season. And we'll see if he can improve. You can't really call him a bust just yet.
No, he's too young to be a bust. One way you can get some confidence in, let's play the kid at the wing already, for crying out loud. You got Taves back. You got Tyler Johnson's back. Just kick him out to the wing. Ask him left, right, which one you want to go to. Let him play a few games out there. Get that confidence. You could tell when Vasilevsky somehow got his stick on that shot that he was just like, you got to be freaking kidding me. We were all saying that.
Yeah.
Confidence goes a long way. We just said that. And take away the whole center aspect for now. I'm not saying give up on him as a center, but for the rest of the season, let's just get him thinking that he can be, a playmaker and a goal scorer at this level.
Well, and at one point they did, when he was playing on the third line and he was with Lafferty, and they had Lafferty taking all the draws, even though I think Doc was still probably playing.
Doc was still
the center
playing
position.
the center role, just
draws.
not taking the faceoffs. Yeah.
But I mean, the center position's the hardest forward position. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot to think about while you're out there. When you don't have the puck, where do you need to be? When you have the puck, there's just a lot of responsibility for a young player. So maybe taking that, easing that responsibility off of him will serve him well in the long run. I mean, hockey player that thinks too much is going to make a lot of, hockey players need to be instinctive and just playing on the feel of the game. It's a fast game. You can't be caught thinking too much out there, because if you're thinking about where to be, the play's going the other direction. The puck's in the back of your own net. So get his confidence up and ease that pressure of trying to be, a second line NHL center at 20, 21 years old. That's not the time for this right now. So I'm going to be, pumping the tires to get this kid on the wing for the rest of the season and see. And then off season, you start
if it
building.
works.
Yeah.
It works.
It's okay if he's not a center.
This is what we're doing right now. We should be experimenting.
Absolutely.
Well, not
Right.
us, but the Blackhawks. The
Right, yeah.
organization.
Now is the time to figure these things out, because it doesn't matter what they do, wins, losses. Figure it out. I feel like I'm on Letterkenny. Figure it out.
Well, and I think Doc is a perfect example of what the Blackhawks need to focus on more with their development of young players, and that's having patience with them. I mean, we saw Doc, he was picked third overall in 2019, and he had an injury conditioning stint with the Ice Hogs, 3 games, and they threw him right in the NHL. In his rookie season, it didn't look like he was out of place. I think we saw flashes of what was, what made him a third overall pick, and he had confidence. He gets injured and everything changes. So I think what we're seeing the Blackhawks do now with a player like Lucas Reichel, like you mentioned earlier, is they're going to take their time. I think if Lucas Reichel was under a different front office for this season, he would be on this team right now, and he would probably have 30, 40 games under his belt. And I think, what we're seeing with Doc is you have to have some patience. And while Doc wouldn't have been a player that, would get seasoning in Rockford, he would have gone back to juniors. A player like Reichel coming out of Europe is able to, kind of circumvent those AHL age requirements, but play, in a professional setting, play against not just, other juniors, 19, 18, 17-year-olds, but play against, big boys, play against the men and get that experience. We're seeing it with Isaac Phillips as well in a similar position, being able to play at a young age against, pros. And I think what Kyle Davidson's should focus on in player development is the long game. And I think, Kirby Dach doesn't have that ability anymore. He just passed his waivers exemption requirement today, but it's not like he was going to go to Rockford anyways.
Right.
The whole point is, have patience with these young guys, extend their develop. There's nothing wrong with having a guy develop too much before putting him into a role in the NHL than having him not developed enough and then throwing him out there to sink or swim.
Yeah. Doc was he was just really not. He wasn't served well with his with this development. Basically the Blackhawks
they
weren't doing real well, and so they threw him in. Oh, hey, we need something. We need some excitement for the fans. So they threw Doc in really before he was ready.
Yeah, they didn't do him any favors. That's for sure.
Yeah,
right. And
hopefully they learn. The new regime learns from those mistakes going forward.
Yeah, and we might see a team next year that has a couple young players, but if we're talking year one of a rebuild, this might not be exactly a roster next season that's full of young guys. It might be some young players like a Lucas Reichel, brought into the fold. Some of the defensemen in the minors might pop up with a couple open spots in the lineup, but we might also see some players who aren't going to be around for longer than a year. We might see some veteran players come in and be, placeholders to let these younger guys get some more time in the minors, get some more time in juniors in Europe and whatnot, and develop more before, throwing them into the NHL as 20-year-olds. We might be seeing guys come in at 21, 22, 23 to their first seasons.
Yeah, you definitely have to. There's some importance to kind of keeping some veterans around. The Patrick Kane or Jonathan Toews. Having them around, or even someone like Ryan Carpenter. I think that Ryan Carpenter would be well served to be a veteran presence on the bottom six with a young team, and to give the good example of what it is to be a pro.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see some players come around next season. Carpenter could be one that comes back if he doesn't get dealt at the deadline, might come back cheap. Sam Lafferty, I think, could be coming back. He's still
he's pretty young.
He's not too old. Today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Sam. But yeah, he's been around for a little while. He's been playing at the pro level for a couple of years. And I think he might, he's going to be cheap. Since he came over in the Alex Nylander deal, he's been serviceable.
Sure.
Those are guys that you're going to see for rebuilding teams. They're going to be around, and they're going to be placeholders for probably just a year, and then who knows, maybe next year he gets flipped at the deadline.
Yeah, I think the number of guys that are going to be on the 2022-23 roster that are actually on this team when they start becoming a perennial playoff team again are very low.
Probably
you can count them on one hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to do it right now? The Brinket. Kane.
Well, is he still going to be here when they're...
Okay, Seth Jones. For better or worse.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Doc, maybe.
Strome,
maybe. See, look at that.
As a contender, though? I don't know.
We're
struggling to get four.
So there you go.
So yeah, that's the amount of change that
can't even get to the little pinky. Hagel,
yeah.
Thank you we forgot
Brandon
to mention
Hagel.
our guy.
Yes.
Again,
we're not trading him.
We don't know.
Right.
We're not saying we want to trade Brandon Hagel.
Right.
Full disclaimer there. But yeah, it's going to be, a long process. Like we said yesterday.
It'll be a long ride. Right.
Long ride.
Say process.
Hop on the ride now. It's going to be a long one. But yeah, there's players that we don't even know yet that are going to be the ones that will come in and hopefully, be those building blocks that are going to bring the Blackhawks back up. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of change, and hopefully, a team that we can look to try and emulate and build through is the team that we played tonight, Lightning. Yep. Like, we saw Chicago in 2015 top an up and coming Lightning team, and I think I know myself back then, I was just like, geez, this Lightning team is going to be a problem to deal with for years to come.
Yep.
And the way that they built that roster, the way that team was built up, they've had sustained success for a number of years. There's a reason that they're back-to-back defending champs.
Almost an entirely homegrown team.
Yeah.
There's
and
very few free agent guys. They always, even when they lose a guy, there's somebody else that you've never heard of. All of a sudden is a 40-point guy on their fourth line. Yeah, they're a team you need to. They're the model. The Blackhawks were the model franchise for a few years.
For a while.
Now it's Tampa Bay.
Well, and speaking of which, something we haven't brought up yet, Tyler Johnson, and there was probably kind of a bittersweet game for him playing his old team, and
that's true.
I think he got his Stanley Cup ring before the game. So
yeah, I wanted to call
this
the Tyler Johnson revenge game, but it didn't work out for him. But
no,
he was
nearly as invisible as Jonathan Toews was in this game.
Yeah.
But I mean that ring will definitely
that'll make up for it.
That'll make up for it.
He
Yeah,
was weighing him down. He had it on.
Yeah, he was a half step too slow. I think he had the ring on under his glove.
14 minutes. He had 4 shots on goal. You guys, Tyler.
Okay,
good for him.
All right. Yeah, you know what? I take that back. He did have a number of opportunities on the power play.
Yeah,
that is true. I did. I did.
Sorry, Tyler.
They were missing him when he was gone. I mean, Patrick Kane even said that they were really missing him in that role, in that spot.
Yeah.
And so hopefully it'll pay out for him.
Yeah. What was it?
I said
Adam Bursch.
They showed the clip of him in the locker room, and I didn't realize how much he looked like Adam Bursch. But
that's right.
I said that Tyler Johnson looks like somebody left Adam Bursch in the dryer too long. So.
Loving the sound
Joey
effects.
is my new 4-star.
Yeah.
He's my new CHGO.
The soundboard.
Yes,
we're giving it a workout.
My 4th star is the kid that smelled his ice cream.
Yes. If you were watching the broadcast, they caught a young Blackhawks fan in a George Costanza moment, enjoying his ice cream.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the things you gotta get excited for when your team's getting pantsed by the 2-time champs on home ice.
Yeah, can't blame the kid.
I just wanted to sneak in real quick. I know we're getting close to wrapping up here, but Gail, we definitely want to thank you for joining us. I just wanted to let our fans know where we can find your stuff. You've been great hanging out with you and talking hockey. So if they're not familiar with you, where can our CHGO fans find your work?
Thank you for having me on as a guest tonight. It was awesome. I come from the Hockey Writers, where I worked with Greg for a number of years.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Funny story. We worked together at the Hockey Writers for almost 4 years. Today is the first time we've actually met in person.
First night.
So
Yeah.
God bless the internet.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But yeah, I've been with, believe it or not, I've actually been with the Hockey Writers since 2017. So what is that? 5 years?
Long time.
So yeah, we actually have our own weekly podcast that we do as well called Blackhawks Banter. So feel free to check that out. And it's been really, really awesome kind of pinch hitting tonight. It's been fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And Gail and I actually crossed paths, had some crossover work many years ago.
Right.
When we both were writing for Blackhawk Up at the time. So shout out to those guys.
Yep.
And gals.
We've all been at Blackhawk Up.
Yeah.
There was we all three of us have had a stint with Blackhawk Up from back in the day.
Mario keeps following me, man. Everywhere I go. At least we're here at the same time.
Yeah, I said if there's someone's coattails that I can ride, it's Greg.
You've made some poor life decisions, my friend.
Oh, but thank you for bringing that up. I forgot that we talked about that at the beginning before the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been you and I have known each other through the internet for a long time, and also the first time meeting face to face. So this was a lot of fun having you on.
And we crossed paths. I think we were actually a couple 2-3 months the same at Blackhawk Up. So,
yep. Yeah.
It is pretty amazing how it works.
How it all comes full circle. Yeah.
Keep grinding, and you get to sit on comfy chairs.
Comfy chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that will do it for the CHGO Blackhawks podcast tonight. Again, the Blackhawks fall to the Tampa Bay Lightning 6-3. Yeah, I mean it's again, hop on the ride now, because hopefully at the end of it, these losses will be few and far between, and the Blackhawks will once again be on the winning end of some games like this.
And hopefully Tuesday night when we're back talking post game, we're talking about a big victory.
Talking about a win.
Yes, that's the hope.
Well, that will do it for tonight. So that has been Gail Kauchak. That has been Greg Boysen. I am Mario Tirabassi. We will see you next time on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.